Hello, everyone, and welcome to Politics and Prose Bookstore. My name is Nicole Davidow. I'm an event staffer here at the store, where on top of obviously amazing in-person events, we're also hosting classes, trips, groups, partnered events, support events, everything fun that can be found at politics-prose.com. Before we get started today, if everyone can check your phones and make sure they are silenced, it would be much appreciated. We are recording tonight's event, so that means that once the Q&A portion of the event kicks off, we will ask that you come to this microphone here by the white pillar so our audio can capture your brilliant questions. After the Q&A, we will have a signing line. We will ask that you line up once again, start the line here by this white pillar. Myself or one of my colleagues will be around with a Post-it to get your name so your book can be personalized. We'll also ask at the end of the event for you to fold up your chairs and put them against something sturdy. I'll remind you all of this later. Do not worry. So with that being said, I'm so excited to introduce Jake Johnston in celebration of his book, Aid State, Elite Panic, Disaster, Capitalism, and the Battle to Control Haiti. In Aid State, Jake, a researcher and writer at the Center for Economic Policy and Research in Washington, D.C., reveals how long-standing U.S. and European capitalist goals ensnared and re-enslaved Haiti under the guise of helping it. Based on years of on-the-ground reporting in Haiti and interviews with politicians in the U.S. and Haiti, independent aid contractors, UN officials, and Haitians who struggle for their lives, homes, and families, Aid State is a conscience-searing book of witness. Jake is a senior research associate at the Center for Economic and Policy Research in Washington, D.C., and has been the leading writer for the center's Haiti Relief and Reconstruction Watch website since February 2010, just weeks after the 7.0 earthquake devastated Haiti. His work has appeared in the New York Times, The Nation, ABC News, Boston Review, Truth Out, The Intercept, and more. Jake will be in conversation with Jeffsky Poincy, a Haitian policy specialist with a master's degree in public policy from Duke University and a degree in economics management from the People's Friendship University in Russia. Jeffsky is an active advocate for Haiti, and he engages in advocacy work for good governance in Haiti. He currently serves as a program manager at Partners Global in Washington, D.C., focusing on governance projects across Africa and Eastern Europe. Please join me in a welcoming Johnston and Poincy to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. Wow, we have a packed house, and this is amazing. I can see some familiar faces coming from Haiti. Welcome, guys. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us tonight to, first of all, celebrate, discuss, and most importantly, purchase Jake's book. So it's a tremendous pleasure and honor for me to be moderating this conversation. We will have 40 to 45 minutes, delving into the book, at least part of it. And after that, you'd have the opportunity to ask some questions. And at the end of the conversation, as Nicole just explained, you'd have the opportunity to purchase the book and get it signed by Jake. And hopefully, you'll also have some opportunity to chat a little bit, as we really want this space to be a networking opportunity for you all. So Nicole did a great introduction of Jake, but I would like to add a few things. Jake's work is well known in Haiti, especially in the media and the civil society sector. In fact, Jake has been, a great resource for the Haitian civil society, especially the human rights organization and the anti-corruption organization, not only in helping them understanding the Haitian issues from the U.S. perspective, but also he's been of a great value to kind of guide them through their advocacy efforts. So for that, Jake, thank you. I think on behalf of the Haitian community, on behalf of the Haitian civil society, thank you for all your work and congratulations on this, impressive book. So before we dive into this interesting conversation, I'd like to take a moment to give my full endorsement, to Jake's book. And this is very important, I think this book is a masterpiece. So a few days ago when I met Jake, after reading the book, just to discuss how this conversation would unfold, I told him, how do I call you? Are you a reporter? Are you a researcher? Or are you an investigative journalist? Because this book is an impressive, investigative work. So it's a beacon of knowledge based on fact and deep dive research. Every single page, every single story in this book is backed with fact, with a lot of proof. And what I enjoyed the most as I was, reading this book is the fact that Jake has a commitment to uncover the truth. And that was really impressive. He followed every lead. He didn't leave any stone unturned just to, trying to understand the behind the scenes and the relationship between Haiti and the US. So, and as a result, you have this book, which is a revelation of a lot of shocking insights that really shed the light into the behind the scene of the relationship of Haiti and the U.S. So, I should also add that this book is very timely, and it gives us a new perspective on how to analyze the different issue, the different crises that Haiti have experienced over the course of history, and even today's crisis. So it literally shows us how the different crises that Haiti have experienced are not only a result from internal factors or a result of Haitians, but also like a long-standing kind of like intervention and interference of the U.S. and the international community, for that matter, in Haiti's affairs. So that gives like a new perspective on how to analyze the situation, including today's crisis. So, Jake, let's get into this. I think the very first question that I have for you is, and I'm pretty sure the audience would, eager to understand as well, is why Haiti? So why, what keeps you up at night when it comes to Haiti, and eventually what led you to, writing this book?
Yeah. Thanks, Jeffsky, for doing this, and everyone for coming out. It's really fun to have a lot of friends and family in the house tonight. Yeah, it's really great. So, yeah, Haiti. I really owe it to my colleagues at the Center for Economic and Policy Research, where I worked in 2009 and continue to work now. And after the earthquake in 2010, we wanted to do something. I think, like a lot of people, we wanted to do something. And what my colleagues understood better than I at the time was, being in Washington, we were actually in a pretty good place to be figuring out what was going to happen, because a lot of the decisions that were made were going to be coming from Washington and not from Haiti. And we realized pretty quickly on that there was a huge disconnect between what we were hearing from organizations in Haiti, what they needed, what they wanted, and what we were hearing as the discussion in DC, which just, again, totally divorced from sort of the reality we were seeing. And the question for me, and what sort of started this journey, was the question of, where did the money go? $10 billion pledged after the earthquake, and that was the question everyone wanted to answer. And yeah, once you sort of started down that path, it was hard to ever stop. But it was pretty shocking, because right off the bat, we realized the answer was, it was going to organizations that were a few blocks from our office in DC, and they weren't going to organizations in Haiti at all. And that really sort of set things off, right? It wasn't just where the money was going to these big for-profit companies that had actually sort of taken over the role of what we think of as NGOs and nonprofits doing humanitarian work. This was a big business. And then there were a lot of interest behind that, and sort of the ball kept rolling from there. And I think, in the end, it was, not just where the money was going, but why was it going there in the first place? And that sort of brought into question these issues of U.S. intervention, of imperialism, of crony sort of capitalism, and kickbacks to private firms, and what are the real motivations behind how we interact with the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing, and we're happy to delve into that, further. But a standout moment in this book is your interview with, former U.S. Ambassador Foote. And for a little bit of context, Ambassador Foote was the U.S. Special Envoy to Haiti in 2021. He resigned after criticizing, the U.S. Policy towards Haiti. So your question to him was, is Haiti a failed state? And, I should admit that his answer was quite interesting and, unexpected, to say the least. He said, and I quote, "Haiti never had a chance to fail." So now my question to you is, why did you feel like this specific question was very important to ask, given the prevailing views that Haiti is in fact a failed state?
Yeah, right. I mean, I think the one fact that basically everyone knows about Haiti in the U.S. is that it's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. That's like the absolute thing. You can't write an article or read an article about Haiti in the English language media without reading that one fact. And that fact is quite related to this belief that Haiti is a failed state, right? We see it all the time: failed, failing state, fragile state, whatever you want to sort of call it. But, it was really clear to me after sort of spending some time in Haiti, researching this, reading everything I could about it, right? I mean, it was a much bigger story than that, right? And it goes back to the beginning. I mean, we're talking about a history of centuries of intervention, of imperialism, right? Going back to slavery in Haiti and a successful slave revolt that actually founded the nation of Haiti in 1804, the first time ever in history. And like, if there's one fact that everyone should know about Haiti, it's that, not that it's poor today, right? And those things are directly related too, right? And so it's also not just the history, right? I think what we saw really clearly after I started looking at Haiti in 2010 was that history was still repeating itself today, right? That interventionism never stopped. We sort of stopped paying attention to it. And the question of failed state, I mean, I think it's really important. And it's not just about sort of assigning blame or looking for, what went wrong, but also, I think we are looking at the situation today and a really difficult situation in Haiti today. And I think it's also important to recognize this for how you move forward, right? I mean, we have to understand the role of the United States, the role of the UN, the role of France, Canada, and all these other countries and institutions in causing this, because again, they're the ones who are lining up to try and help today, right? And so we need to sort of understand that history and those dynamics to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you allow, I want to go back a little bit, as you mentioned, the 2010 earthquake, and from what you mentioned, that was the origin, of the book. And reading the book, I realized that you analyzed this, the earthquake response, very thorough. You gave I think 4 to 5 chapters of the book are devoted to this specific issue. You traveled to Haiti multiple times after the earthquake, and if I remember well, you also published a lot of research papers about the earthquake response, and you kind of like describe it as a failure of the U.S. aid approach to Haiti, and ultimately as the one of the shortcomings of U.S. foreign policy towards Haiti. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Where did the money go, and what exactly do you think is not working when it comes to U.S. aid?
Yeah, and I want to be clear. I mean, I think it failed for Haiti, right? I don't think it necessarily failed for the people who are spending the money. And that's part of the problem. And it's true though, right? I mean, it's not. It's the system we build, right? I mean, this isn't like an accident that the money doesn't go to Haitian groups or doesn't go to the Haitian government. It goes to private contractors in D.C., right, on K Street, whatever. That's not an accident. It's because that's the system we've built. Lawmakers pass rules that make it literally illegal for USAID to give money to Haitian organizations in many cases, or make the barriers so high that it's practically impossible. And there are reasons for that, right? It's not just random. It's because members of Congress are looking to support U.S. businesses. They're looking to pitch foreign aid as a way to promote the U.S. and not to do development work in Haiti. And so from that perspective, right, I heard this a lot going to Haiti and talking to people involved with these projects, is, our job is to spend the money. It doesn't really matter what we accomplish with it. Like, if we've spent the money, we've done our job, and then we get to move on, right? And so, this obviously has had huge impacts, right? I mean, the Haitian state public services have largely been outsourced, and this is something that's started well before the earthquake. I mean, at the time of the earthquake, 2010, it was between 60, 70% of all public services, education, health, things like this, were all in the hands of NGOs, private actors, multilateral banks, right, outside of the Haitian government. And that has huge impacts. I mean, it totally disconnects the people from their government, because it's not their government that's actually providing these services. It's a foreign actor who's not accountable to you, but is accountable to their donors, who are probably here, right? And the other sort of dynamic that happened along with this is, like, it wasn't just the Haitian state that was being outsourced. It was our aid system itself, right? So it's not USAID that gets money and then implements projects, right? They get money and then they give money to another company or another organization that then implements the project, and they take 20% off the top here, right? And it's totally circular. And so what I would say is, like, even if you had the best intentions, if you wanted to do something right, you really couldn't if you were involved in the system. And, you know, one example, there was a handful of companies that got the lion's share of money after the earthquake, Beltway bandits, whatever you want to call them. And there's just a handful all here right in DC. And after the earthquake, the U.S. government rolled out a reform plan. They wanted to break up these big contracts. They wanted more money going to local organizations. There's, really ambitious reforms, and it sounded great, right? The development companies that had just gotten hundreds of millions of dollars for their work in Haiti took that money, hired a well-connected Democratic lobbyist, formed a lobbying group, and fought against those exact reforms that USAID, which was funding them, was trying to implement, right? And so it's just this circular thing where, of course, you're not going to succeed if that's what the rules of the game are.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking. You mentioned a very important point, and the fact that, by outsourcing the Haitian institutions and by having, so many NGOs, that create a situation where there's a disconnect, as you mentioned, between the people, and the states, and that ultimately, undermine the entire social contract, right? And we can see that being manifested in so many ways in Haiti, in different crises that we're seeing right now. You see the Haitian people, for example, if you look at the political participation, the turnover in the last elections in 2010, for example, and you see like the lack of political participation is a manifestation of this issue where the people don't really feel like they don't hold the government accountable, and at the end you have the government that is more accountable to the donors than they are accountable to their own people. And I think this is a very important issue, and thank you for highlighting this.
And I mean, I think it's it's not just as simple as the aid stuff either, right? I mean, that's like what was sort of most visible at the time, but this obviously manifests itself in different ways. And I mean, one is just direct intervention, right? So we look at the 2010 election in Haiti. It's held after the earthquake, more than 1 million people displaced. I mean, everyone knew that this was not going to work, right? I mean, donors just said, no, we've got to move forward. We need to have this election now. Right, for them, it wasn't about democracy. It was stability. They needed a new partner to oversee $10 billion in reconstruction spending. And so when the election predictably went really poorly, and it was a very razor-thin margin, the international community ended up coming in and basically blackmailing the Haitian government to overturn the electoral results under the threat of withholding the very earthquake aid that was on the table, right? This $10 billion, that no aid if you don't change the results of your election. And so what kind of a message does that send over the long term, right? I mean, obviously that had huge impacts in the moment and brought somebody to the presidency that I think, is ultimately significantly responsible for a lot of the situation that we're seeing today. But again, that was all the sort of original sin, is that intervention, right? That overt intervention from the international community. But again, that election, 1 million people displaced, you had very low turnout. Not terribly surprising. History shows Haitians will turn out to vote if they have trust in the process, right? I mean, there have been elections in Haiti's history where, you have huge turnouts, right? But what's happened since then? Participation's just continued to go down in each election, right? And so the last election in 2016, I mean, even if you believed every vote was valid, it still had 18% participation, right? And so we wonder why these governments aren't stable, why they don't have a popular mandate. Well, we've also outsourced the electoral system, right? The U.S. and the international community, they fund the elections, they then determine its legitimacy, and ultimately might just pick the winner, right? And so what does that send as a message to the Haitian people?
Now, Jake, let's talk a little bit more about that. Some people listening to you now might dismiss that as some kind of like conspiracy theory, right? So just what did you discover in the book? What are the facts that you provided to support this claim of electoral interference especially in the 2010 electoral process?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, this started with work at the Center for Economic and Policy Research, and we knew there was this controversy going around the election, and everyone wanted to know what the real counting was, and we put together a team of people to go through by hand and transcribe something like 11,000 different tally sheets so that we could start running statistical analysis on wanted to see patterns of possible fraud and things like this. And while we were doing that, a team from the Organization of American States had been asked to come in to Haiti to analyze the vote. And there's an interview with former President Preval in the book, and he invited the OAS to come in, right? And he recalls a conversation with the head of the UN mission at the time, who was a Guatemalan diplomat, and he says, sir, like, the OAS is going to come in, they're going to tell us the real accounting, and we can, move past this. And, as Preval related to me, the response was, we already know what the results are going to be, right? Your guy's not making it to the second round. It doesn't matter what the numbers say. And, it's been a long time since those 2010 elections. I mean, we've had so many different pieces of evidence come out, different testimony. There's another anecdote from an electoral councilwoman who was present, part of the institution for the election, when she recounts, again, meeting with the same UN diplomat with all of the electoral councilors in a restaurant in Pétionville, where they're just told straight up what the results are going to be before that whole recount process even had taken place, right? And so, we can go even further. In fact, before the OAS showed up, the USAID had hired a former Haitian electoral counselor, unbeknownst to nobody, this is not public information, sent them to the tabulation center and had them do an analysis and basically just lower a threshold for fraud lower and lower and lower until they got to a level that would have changed the results. And it said, okay, that's what we'll do. And then the OAS came in and said, we're going to do a statistical analysis. And they didn't. And the head OAS statistician even told us that he didn't do any statistical analysis based on it. But what they did was the exact same thing the USAID contractor had already done.
Yeah, I mean, this is shocking. But again, I read your book and I saw the amount of evidence that you provided to support this claim. And I think this is this is really shocking. So let's talk a little bit about the interventionist approach that you mentioned when you started talking about the book. You discuss in the book how the notion of stability for the US and the international community when it comes to Haiti revolves around military action, right? So you call that military-led nation building, which personally find fascinating. And you provide different examples, such as the U.S. occupation of Haiti in 1915. There have been at least 6 UN peacekeeping missions from 1993 to 2019, including the MINUSTA. And you also mention other instances, of military presence in Haiti. For example, the U.S. military response after the earthquake that you call the compassionate invasion. So, and now, given the ongoing dynamics where the international community and the U.S. are trying to push for a Kenyan-led, mission in Haiti, could you tell us about your observation and why, do the international community persist, in this approach, regardless of the fact that they haven't, been successful if we look through the history?
It's a big question there. Yeah, I mean, I think Haiti's not unique in a lot of these things, right? And I in the beginning of the book, I draw the comparison with Afghanistan, and because I think, a lot of these dynamics, we sort of see it play out in other places that are on people's radar, that are in the media, and this dynamic's been playing out in Haiti for 20, 30 years, and basically nobody is even aware of it, right? So even today, we can say, oh, well, Haiti's this failing state, and without ever acknowledging that it's had basically successive UN institutions as a de facto fourth branch of government for 30 years, right? Like, this has been happening for a long, long time. And I think, for me, right, this is this huge question. MINUSTA was the UN peacekeeping operation in Haiti, and it was there for 13, 14 years, 10,000 troops, right? We weren't really counting that as a U.S. military occupation over those years, but it was, right? And it was a stability mission. And, okay, stability for whom, right? I mean, who's actually benefiting from this stability? And I think that's the key question that we have to ask about that. I think it's pretty clear now, right? We can see who benefited from that stability. It wasn't, broadly speaking, the Haitian people, right? It was certain Haitian people and certain international people. And I think, we're looking at the situation today. It's a similar dynamic, right? And so, for what reason are troops being called into Haiti, right? And I think we can all acknowledge the significance of the situation and how difficult it is and the violence and insecurity we've seen. And yet you hear a lot of organizations, people, some of them over here, talking about how, right, this will only further provide stability for the illegitimate government that's currently in power, right? So again, stability for whom? Who's going to benefit from it?
Yeah, and you put it so well in your book. You mentioned something like the priority for the U.S. and the international community is stability, even if it takes months of instability to get there. That's it. That's a great quote, and I think that reflects well, all this, situation. But for me, that might sound like a silly question, is even if you try to put that, in a very logic way, you see that a Kenyan mission in Haiti, a military, intervention in Haiti, wouldn't, bring it like the expected outcome. And this for different reasons, right? For example, if you look through, history, we've been, we experienced all those military intervention, and they weren't successful. And also we have a lot of spillover effects coming from those interventions, right? And you mentioned in the book the different impact that the MINUSTAH presence had on Haiti. People never got this, peace dividend that was supposed to come from those military action, but yet we see the same dynamic. And what do you make of that?
Yeah, and I think, it comes back to something earlier in this sort of notion of the state, stability for whom, right? But just so MINUSTAH, right, 14 years, it cost over $7 billion, right? $7 billion that was spent on materials, troops, things like that, but not building up the Haitian police or things like this, or Haitian judiciary, Haitian institutions, right? We can see the sort of weakness of these arguments. And you can talk about MINUSTAH, and you can talk about its introduction of cholera, which killed tens of thousands of people in Haiti, and the UN has still never actually accepted true responsibility for sexual exploitation of police, all sorts of these things. It's extrajudicial killings. But, to me, sort of the most lasting legacy of that was that it was propping up a totally unsustainable status quo, right? And that gets us back to this concept of the aid state, or a state that is totally divorced from the people, that is not representative of them or responsive to them. That over time, through this history of interventionism, has become, like you mentioned earlier, more responsive to outside actors than to the Haitian people themselves. And we can kind of understand that when you look at the history, right? I mean, if it's the U.S. who's picking the winner, you kind of got to cozy up to the U.S., right? That's what you would do logically. And so I think, again, it's sort of perpetuating that unsustainable status quo is what the actual implication of it was. And, we look at the situation today, right? And I think, I'm pushing back on this concept of that Haiti is a failed state, right? But I think it is important to recognize that, like, the state is failing today, right? The state has failed the Haitian people. But I also think we have to understand why that can be a good thing, right? Or why that can create a path for something different. Because there was this totally unresponsive and unaccountable state that existed and was there to protect certain interests, but certainly not to provide for the actual population of Haiti. And for something new to be built, for something new to be created, that has to fail, right? That had to collapse. That was the only way that you would have the space to be able to do something next. And I mean, there's a lot of people in Haiti, and some, again, in this room, who are fighting really, really hard to build that what comes next, right? But that's what it's going to take.
I mean, that's a question for everybody. And I really hope, your book will, inspire this, advocacy, from Haiti, even from the diaspora groups. And we'll get to that, later. But I think it would have been a missed opportunity not to talk about the former President Jovenel Moise assassination. And you mentioned that in the last chapter of your book. You wrote an entire epilogue about that. So just for a little bit of context, President Jovenel Moise has been assassinated in Haiti in 2021. But almost 3 years later, Haitian people have been kept in the dark, as to what really happened. The whole investigation and the trial, they're all taking place in the U.S. And as a matter of fact, 4 of the suspects that were apprehended in Haiti, they were ultimately transferred to the U.S. to stand trial, which is quite surprising because I've been following global politics, but you don't find that often, right? So we're talking about a Haitian president assassinated in Haiti, but yet the investigation and the entire trial is being conducted in the U.S. And what is more surprising is the fact that this has been labeled as confidential because of U.S. national security reasons, as if like the Haitian people don't have the right to know what happened with with the president. So what do you make of this, and how does that align to the definition of or the characteristics of the aid state as you've been describing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's another instance of outsourcing of state functions, right? I mean, it's the outsourcing of the judiciary, it's the outsourcing of accountability, and I think there's there's a lot we could talk about with the assassination, and it's sort of fascinating, but beyond the specifics of the whodunit sort of aspect, there's one fact that I think is most important to understand about the assassination, and that is that almost to a T, every single person who's been implicated or arrested in it has publicly stated that they believe they were acting with the U.S. government support, right? And that's not to say that it was a top-down U.S. conspiracy to assassinate the president. I don't think they had any interest in him getting killed, right? But it tells you about the role of the United States in Haiti, right? And what it tells me is that if you actually were going to investigate this case, honestly, truthfully, right to the end of it, it would be an opportunity to try and get at that web of power and international connections that have sort of taken hold of Haiti for so long. And I think one thing that we're missing, obviously, by having that trial take place in the United States is the United States' role in all of that, right? Because we're not going to get those things. And it's not just people claiming that they were, had the support of somebody. I mean, there's a whole cottage industry of people in Haiti who basically sell access to the U.S. government and convince people that they're representing the U.S. government, and they're not. But in this case, you had 2 former DA informants who were among those arrested and an active FBI informant who the FBI says was the ringleader of the operation, right? So, those are some pretty big questions that the U.S. government should be answering about this assassination, and obviously they're not going to. And I think, I just want to make another point about this case that's happening in Florida, because I think a lot of folks have put their hope on that case to answer the question of who assassinated the president and why, right? But it's not a case designed to answer that question. And not just because they don't want the answer, maybe, but also just because it is a U.S. case. They're focusing on a very narrow aspect of the case where people are directly connected to Florida, and they want guilty verdicts on that specific thing, right? They're not going to open it up into the whole sort of whodunit or what the real mastermind was behind this. Those aren't part of the U.S. investigation, right? And so we're not going to get those answers from that U.S. case if we get anything from it at all.
Well, I think that gets us back to the fact that with the aid state, as you described, there is this de facto outsourcing of the Haitian institutions, and that's just an example, right? So we can, if we get deeper into that, we can find other example where you feel like the Haitian institution in general, whether it's state institution or political institution, have been de facto outsourced by either NGO or by either some other external powers. And I think it's great that you mentioned that and you highlight that in your book. So as everybody could see, the book is full of revelations and full of a lot of shocking news, and that's why I think it's very important to understand the process of collecting the data, the process of gathering evidence to put this book together. Can you walk us through that process?
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of thanks, and one person in particular, Eitan, who is back there, but my Sherpa through Haiti over 15 years, and a lot of other people in this room too. But again, I think again, it started in D.C., right? It started here, and it was because there was information here that people in Haiti didn't have access to, but we did. And that's sort of how it started, right? Was reading reports, and finding all of that information, getting that to people in Haiti. And then as time went on, there was a lot of attention on Haiti after the earthquake, right? I mean, there was tons of journalists, people were reporting on every little thing and scandals and things like that. And then attention sort of faded. And then I started going to Haiti more and more and more. And, it's, I think it says something about the dynamic, right? But I had a few big advantages, in Haiti. I mean, one was I was a foreigner, which means, I didn't have the same risk, right? I mean, I could write things and do things and poke around in things, and then go home, right, to here. And that gave me a certain amount of protection, right? And the other thing is, Blanc privilege, right? I mean, that's a real thing. Blanc is a term for foreigners in Haiti. And, I mean, yeah, the political and economic elite, they look to the U.S., right? They care about that. And so when I went down and said, hey, I work for a think tank in D.C., they should have Googled me, I guess, right? But they didn't, and they let me in and opened up and talked to me, right? And so I was able to get access to certain, individuals and entities in Haiti that I think was cut off from a lot of Haitians, right? And that's a whole nother issue and problem that, we could probably spend a lot longer talking about. But, that's really where it went. And it was, working with some groups in Haiti, and it was, a lot of the times I was just having these meetings and then turning around and giving information to the folks in Haiti who could really do something with it, right? It wasn't for me at all. It was, I didn't know what to do with this. But, that's really where it started. And then just, again, with Eitan, with all these friends and traveling around Haiti and getting to sort of see this in person, I think I talk about this a little bit in the book, but, for me, like, I talked about how I got involved with Haiti, but why I stayed involved with Haiti, and I think it sort of relates to this, was, I care about U.S. foreign policy. I care about U.S. foreign policy in Haiti, but also in other places, right? And, you can read these books and you can see the theory and you can understand how this intervention works and how imperialism works. And spending time in Haiti, it doesn't leave a lot to the imagination, right? I mean, like, it smacks you in the face, the role of the United States, the role of these foreign powers. You can't ignore it. It's right there, right? There's a thing called the core group that is, again, basically a fourth branch of government that just functions out in the open. They're not hiding anything, right? The ambassadors of these countries are calling the shots. It's all right there for you to see. And so for me, part of this was, it was a window into U.S. foreign policy, but it was a way to understand it. That in a lot of ways was a lot easier to understand than looking at these other countries where they do a better job of hiding it.
That's great. And this is, from the Haitian side. So what about here in the U.S.? Have you, encountered any, difficulty in finding the documents you needed to, back up your stories?
Yeah, I mean, people think information in Haiti is really hard to come by, but it's pretty hard in this city too. People don't love talking about this stuff. We have freedom of information laws, and they're awful, right? I mean, it took years and years and years to get just little bits of information from contractors, from government agencies, and I had some success in that, and that's great, but yeah, there's not a whole lot of willingness to talk openly about this stuff, certainly in government circles, and they might have spent more time Googling me here too.
Absolutely. So, you provided a pretty dark, picture of, U.S. foreign policy and international community's response to Haiti. So, I just want to ask you, how optimistic are you in, any type of prospect of change? Do you feel like, for the U.S. policymakers or anyone for that matter, who's already engaged in Haiti or plan to, engaging in Haiti, do you have any, guiding principles or any ideas on how to move forward from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the first question, I'm ever an optimist, right? And I think you sort of have to be, but I think there are good reasons to be too. I mean, I think the dynamic I was talking about earlier about, not needing some sort of space to be able to create something new is, it's not an optimistic thing today, but I think it is an optimistic thing in the long term. And, I think for me, what kept me going back to Haiti is, there's amazing organizing happening all over this country all the time, right? And that's where the optimism comes from a lot of people here too. Again, I'm gonna keep looking over here. What's up, friend? Right, but there is that happening, and we don't often see it here. We don't often get that in the headlines, but it is happening. It's happening against unimaginable odds, right? And that is something to be optimistic about. And I think there have been real changes here too, if not in policy, in the general sort of recognition of how these systems work. I mean, I think broadly speaking, the stuff I'm talking about with the aid industry, for example, it's not a fringe opinion at all. It's like the global consensus from development experts is that our systems are not working well, right? I mean, so there is that consensus that these things need to change, and it's going to be hard to make those changes, but there's progress. And I think we've even seen progress in terms of how Haiti's covered in a lot of ways in the last, 10, 15 years. There was a New York Times series a few years ago that really talked about, the price that Haiti was made to pay for its independence and for that fight, right? And so I think as people become more aware of this and we can sort of help elevate Haiti onto the sort of consciousness of a U.S. audience, all of those things are going to help because, I think one of the big questions I always get on Haiti is like, what motivates U.S. policy? Why do they even care what's happening in Haiti? And I think it's a big conversation, but for a lot of the last decade, the main goal of U.S. policymakers in Haiti is just that people don't pay attention to what is happening in Haiti, right? Like, they just don't want you to see. They don't want you to look at it. They don't want articles about what's happening in Haiti. They don't want people asking them questions about why they're doing what they're doing in Haiti. It's just keep it out of sight, right? And so I think, we got to do everything we can to pull it into the light.
Yeah, and absolutely, and I definitely agree with you on that. So we already know that you involved in some advocacy work. You've been helping a few organizations, Haitian-based organization, diaspora groups, in advancing the advocacy efforts in the U.S. And you mentioned to me actually that one of the purpose of this book is to actually push the advocacy agenda further, just to make people, as you mentioned, more aware about what's going on in Haiti, and ultimately about the implication of the interference or the international community's response to the different crises in Haiti. So my question to you is, how do you think the Haitians organization, Haitian civil society in general, and the diaspora groups can leverage all the information that you provided through the book to advance like an advocacy agenda on behalf of Haitians?
That's a big one, Jeffsky.
Everything is big in the book.
No, I mean, I think there's a few things, and I think I just want to preface this with, obviously we're talking about things that happened in the past, and we can talk about things that happened centuries ago, right? But it's all still repeating itself, right? The Haiti's current authorities, such as they are, is an unelected prime minister who has the entirety of the power in the country. There's no elected officials, and he got to that position through a tweet from the core group, from these international diplomats, right? So it's still going on, right? And so for me, working here, the biggest thing is trying to change that dynamic, right? Everything framed right now is around supporting Haitian-led solutions and things like this. And U.S. they love saying this, and I think we all want to support Haitian-led solutions, but the assumption there is that the U.S. is not already intervening, that is not currently intervening, right? And the reality is that their thumb is already on the scale, right? And the sort of first ask, the most simple ask, is take your thumb off the scale, right? And I think, if anything, this book is sort of an explanation of how heavy that thumb is, right? But it's multifaceted, right? It's not just through one mechanism. It's through all of these different little institutions and different decisions and different actors that together create that reality. And so it's going to be sort of chipping away at each block.
That's great. Now I think it's time to turn it over to the public. I know you guys have a lot of questions. There's a microphone right there, so you can just line up and ask your questions that Jake will be happy to answer.
3 African presidents were assassinated in 2021 due to not following or promoting the COVID vaccine. Do you think that might have been this situation here? And also, can you address allegations of high-level child trafficking and organ harvesting?
I have no idea on the former. There's certainly nothing I've seen to indicate that, or the latter, really. I'm sorry.
Well, I wonder what the source of funding is for your organization that allows you to hopefully speak. Well, you seem to speak very freely. And do you have any opinion possibly about whether some people have said, maybe it's a conspiracy theory, that the earthquake itself was started by HARP geoengineering?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly heard it. I mean, I think, we've seen quite a bit of research come out on the earthquake. And I think, it's worth spending a minute on this because it's a risk that still exists for Haiti today, right? There are fault lines underneath the country. The pressure is building. The leading seismologists are warning that there is a real risk of more earthquakes. And there was an earthquake in 2021, not long after the assassination, that was actually more powerful than the earthquake in 2010. And so that risk is still there. And I think, again, it's not just... we're talking about this sort of a lot of issues, but the reality, right, is you have a country that's not better prepared to face the next disaster, right? And I talk about this a little bit in the book, is like, what is the ultimate measure of success or failure of the reconstruction effort? And the response to the earthquake 10 years after the first one, was about as good an indication of the failure as we could get.
And your source of funding?
You can talk to my colleagues behind you.
I fund CBER from time to time, just for the record. Yeah, I love your organization. Can you elaborate a little bit more on, forgive me, Soriel, can you elaborate a little bit more on sanctions at large in Haiti, and perhaps, because I know your organization does a lot, compared to some of the other places, and the impact that's having on Haitian immigration?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I mean, I think, we do a lot of work on sanctions at CBER and the human cost of sanctions, right, and the economic harm that they do. And Haiti, I think, is a slightly different case right now because they're entirely individual sanctions, and they're not sector-wide sanctions. And so far, they haven't implicated any active government officials, so it's not, impacting that. I mean, I think from my own perspective, and we were actually having some conversation around this today, I mean, I think there is... some value. I mean, the elites in Haiti, the political and economic elites, a lot of the people who are behind a lot of these ugly things that we're seeing, they have close ties to the U.S. They've got maybe family here, maybe a house here, maybe even a business here. And so those sanctions can, act as a deterrent. I think, from my perspective, there's two issues. I mean, one is sanctions are not a stand-in for actual accountability, right? And they don't lead to any legal process or justice process in Haiti. They certainly haven't, right? If we really care about this, that's where it would need to go. And the other part is, I think I just spent the better part of an hour talking about the negative effects of U.S. intervention in Haiti and elsewhere, and empowering the U.S. to pick and choose who they like and who they don't like and who's good and who's bad. It might be helpful one day and it could be very detrimental the next, right? And so that's a huge risk I see moving forward with sanctions.
Hey, I had a question. You touched a little bit on the second earthquake that we saw in 2021. I know it kind of gets lost with everything that's been happening in Haiti these last few years, but I was wondering, I know even though it was less harmful, overall than obviously 2010, have you been doing any monitoring or seeing any comparisons of if there's been any lessons learned implemented from the U.S. government on how they responded to that with both immediate assistance and sort of long-term reconstructions, or has it been more of the same?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in a lot of respects, it's been the same. I mean, I think there were some differences, and I think, a lot of those differences had to do with really tremendous organizing on the ground, that groups after 2010 came together and did local censuses and tried to figure out what their communities need and how to organize them. And so when there was a disaster, they were able to come up with a much better response and a much quicker response. And unfortunately, I think, the reality was that a lot of that was still ignored, right? And I think it sort of belies this idea that we hear this constantly. It's there's too much corruption in Haiti to give Haitians money, right? They are not organized enough, and we need to do this for them. And it's Haitians don't have a monopoly on corruption. We've got plenty of that. We've institutionalized it, legalized it, but also that capacity, right? I mean, the capacity is local, right? It's not international. The people who are capable of knowing what they need and how to deliver it are the people who are affected by it. And really, until we can change that paradigm and change that dynamic, those responses aren't going to change a whole lot.
Thank you, and congratulations on this book. When you look at the history of U.S. intervention in Haiti after independence, and particularly after 1915 and up to today, I've come to the conclusion that there are two basic elements in U.S. policy toward Haiti: control and ideology. Now, do you think, am I wrong? Can you confirm, partially reject?
I'm not going to fight you on it.
and is Haiti now still part of the Cold War as far as the U.S. is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, has it ended anywhere? I mean, is anything? There's a lot going on in this world that would indicate otherwise, I think, right? But I think that's right. I mean, the battle for Haiti, right? A battle to control Haiti. I mean, I think that's still going on, and it's about this issue of control. And I think, the other thing, and I think, I get into this a lot in the book, is like it doesn't necessarily mean there is some top-down order or decision from the president. We need to control Haiti, right? It's that the institutions we've built up to interact with Haiti, and not just Haiti, other countries as well, to provide assistance and these things are relics of a different era, of a different system, right? Or something that we might not want to have today. And they self-perpetuate. It doesn't take a whole lot of direction for them to just keep functioning as they have always functioned, because that's the way they have, and the incentive structure that's built in, the individuals who are in the position to make these choices are doing what's in their best interest, right? They're looking for the next promotion. They're doing what they've been told to do. They're trying to check the box so they can move on. But the accumulation of all of those little things has this result, right? And I don't think ultimately that's an accident.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jake, for the talk. That was really great, really interesting. Over the weekend in El Salvador, the self-styled millennial dictator Nayib Bukele was reelected. In his first term, he used the military to simultaneously advance his political power and also to crack down on a really serious gang problem in El Salvador, not dissimilar to the gang problem in Haiti today. Do you think that there are lessons to be learned from El Salvador's recent experience? And do you think that conditions in Haiti are ripe for that brand of authoritarianism to emerge?
On the latter part first, ripe for it, yeah. Of course, I think you see it already. I think a lot of people in Haiti are looking at Bukele and seeing that and seeing the situation in their country and saying, hey, we need somebody who can do this. I think the actual practical implications of it are not at all applicable. Haiti already has a ridiculously high prison population that is overflowing the jails. They can't do that anymore. And so that's, one thing we're talking about, this issue of sending Kenyan troops or police down there to, go after gang leaders. Like, they don't have anywhere to put them. You can't, it's just not going to work. And I think the other thing is it speaks to sort of bigger issues, right? For me, the sort of draconian iron fist policies, it's got him reelected yesterday. But I think the jury is out on what the long-term implications of that really are going to be, right? And I think certainly when we're looking at Haiti and we're looking at the drivers of insecurity and instability, there are far easier ways to address this, right? Than through security, right? These are at their core issues of social exclusion, issues of misgovernance, and issues of international intervention. And building a new social contract and actually trying to build new institutions, is going to be a far more sustainable solution than trying to throw as many people as possible in jail.
Thanks. Yeah. Hi. I was wondering if what your thoughts are on the role of maybe like debt and financial policy in, I guess, like the subjugation of Haiti right now, and as it relates to the U.S. and other actors in the global north, and also just if you think there's any, I guess, like lineage there. I'm just thinking of like early in the 19th century when, the reparations basically,
Gotcha.
right, that Haiti was made to pay to France. So just like how that role of debt, how that plays a role in controlling and, reducing the sovereignty there.
Yeah. So just to fill in the history, so after Haiti gained its independence through a successful slave revolt in 1804, abolished slavery in the Constitution, the whole world didn't recognize Haiti. Nobody recognized Haiti. The U.S. didn't recognize Haiti. It took the U.S. 60 years to actually recognize Haiti. France recognized them a little bit earlier in 1825 at a tremendous cost, forcing Haiti to pay an indemnity of, the calculations now, it was like tens of billions, 100 billion. Who's got an accurate figure now? But a huge sum that they paid off through successive loans and then took out more loans to try and pay back those loans, and were indebted through that spiral until the middle of the 20th century. And then a different kind of debt and dependence came about with the economic changes in the world, right? And the sort of rise of neoliberalism and the cutting of the state and the IMF programs that came to Haiti and the World Bank and the conditions that came with that in the 90s. which had huge impacts on Haiti, obviously. And some of them, I talk about in the book, like one of the conditions was cutting rice tariffs down to 3% from much, much higher. And, this is something that Bill Clinton apologized to Haiti for after the earthquake, but nothing's changed, right? And a lot of those policies and those economic policies that have continued, I think it's long past time to start to address some of those things. And, I think we've also seen some other ways. Haiti, fortunately, benefited from significant amounts of debt relief through the HIPC thing in the early 2000s and also after the earthquake. But, those same sort of structures that were in place that were controlling the policies remained, right? And I think ultimately that was more important than the level of debt, was the control over those policies. And that is continuing, right? So we're talking about all this stuff, but nobody's talking about just like raising tariffs on rice to try and help farmers a little bit.
Hey, Wolf here from Haiti Policy House. I have a question. Doing your research, did you notice any sense of chiefdom or fiefdom from federal employees that are working on Haiti? Because you kind of get a sense that there's like a club of people who work on Haiti, and this also kind of never changes. So did you experience that in your research, and how did you go about it?
I don't think they let me in, Wolf. No, I think you're not wrong, right? I think there are people who have worked on Haiti and continue to work on Haiti, and it repeats. And it's true in D.C., but it's also true in Haiti. You see the staff that come through from an NGO and then the UN, and then they come back 2 years later as a World Bank consultant, right? And it's this sort of revolving circle. And I think, it does have an impact because people sort of just get into that system and they come in with the same preconditions and notions that they have from before, and just keep repeating the same thing. And I think it goes back to something I mentioned earlier, which is like, what is success, right? And I think there's a few reasons for why people want those jobs. One is that, and there's a chapter in this book with an aid contractor, and he explains how he can make way more money working in Haiti than he can at home in Texas working on construction projects, because in Haiti he gets hazard pay, he gets built-in vacations where he can leave and go to a beach for a while, right? The quality of life was actually a lot better for him working in Haiti, and also nobody cared if he didn't get anything done, because nobody expected him to get anything done, because there weren't expectations like that. It was just spending the money, right? And so, yeah, Haiti's been good to a lot of people, and a lot of people have been bad to Haiti, and that dynamic continues.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Okay, so if there's no more question, I think, thank you all guys.
Thank you all so much. Round of applause.